Many people dream of living in Hawaii, but something is simmering below the surface.
Bag of carrots, $8. Bag of grapes, $17.
The shipping is like $200 on a $200 carrot.
On an island, hundreds of kilometers from any major market, most things are imported. That's why Hawaiians pay the most for utilities, milk, and housing, paying twice as much as in the state of New York.
This is what you can get for $2,000 a month in Hawaii.
But Hawaii reached a tipping point where local jobs no longer offer a livable wage because in terms of income, they rank near the dead center. But is Hawaii's extreme unaffordability simply an inevitable consequence of its isolation from major markets, or is it the result of poor decision-making? This is how America destroyed Hawaii with hindsight.
The number of people experiencing homelessness in Hawaii has nearly doubled in the last year.
It's a side of Hawaii that's often overlooked, but Hawaii is also the US state with the highest rate of homelessness, and this particularly affects Native Hawaiians. I've already shared a lot of statistics in which Hawaii came on top, but it's important to realize that Native Hawaiians have it by far the worst. They have the lowest income, highest poverty rate, and they're twice as likely to be homeless. I'm going to break down exactly what is happening in Hawaii today, but first, it's important that we understand how the current social fabric of Hawaii took shape. In the late 1800s, Native Hawaiians and American settlers were living together in Hawaii. Their economy was made up for over 90% of sugarcane production. These large plantations were owned by American settlers, while Native Hawaiians, in theory, still had political power. The extreme distance of Hawaii to major markets posed an economical challenge. But in the late 1890s, they still became of a key strategic interest to Washington. The United States was at that time at war with Spain. This was fought in part in the Western Pacific. Never before in American history had the US fought a war this far from home. And it became apparent that this type of global conflict was the future. The US had to become a stronger naval power, and Hawaii was uniquely situated to serve as a military outpost to defend shipping routes. But there wasn't much political support in the beginning to annex Hawaii until McKinley became president. He put his weight behind American settlers in Hawaii, and despite protests from the native population, the islands were annexed as a US territory. It was the start of a new era. During the World Wars, Hawaii saw a rapid militarization. The islands were used as a military training ground, and some islands became entirely off-limits to the public to be used as bomb testing sites. Most of these islands held deep spiritual meaning to native peoples. On Oahu, next to Honolulu, they turned this harbor, Pearl Harbor, into their most important naval base in the region. The military, together with agriculture, were the main pillars of the economy, and native Hawaiian culture was discouraged and in some cases even outlawed in an attempt to Americanize their possession. But that changed in the 1950s. This period saw a revival of native Hawaiian culture. The island's leadership recognized their potential for tourism now that air travel was being normalized. Native Hawaiian spiritual practices like hula dancing were now commodified to help sell a picture of Hawaii as an attractive holiday destination. The number of tourists grew from basically nothing in the 1950s to receiving well over 7 million people per year by the end of the millennium. This new sector of the economy transformed the islands, and this coincided with a drop in sugarcane production. The decline of this sector was primarily caused by new labor laws that Hawaii adopted after gaining statehood. They could no longer rely on cheap imported labor, and now movements to address the marginalized position of Native Hawaiians also started gaining momentum. Only few saw coming how terribly this was going to backfire. Okay, so before we start getting into what is happening today, a quick message from our sponsor. How safe is your personal information? This is probably the most valuable information that you possess, but there exists an entire industry out there of companies who are trying to collect this data and to sell it behind your back. This is a major reason why you're getting so much junk mail and receive so many robot calls, and it leaves you vulnerable to identity theft. But luckily, you have the right to privacy, and there exist laws that require data brokers to delete your information if you make that request. Incogni, the sponsor of today's video, has automated this process for you. They reach out to data brokers on your behalf and make requests for your data to be deleted. They already took my data off 135 lists, and they're working on 12 more at this very moment. Under the activity log, you can see exactly off which list your data has been recently deleted. If you want to restore your privacy, Incogni is offering a 60% discount on an annual plan if you use my link in the description or in the pinned comment. That is 60% off an annual plan. And now, let's go back to the video. Today, Hawaii is still co-inhabited by descendants from American settlers and by native Hawaiians, as well as recent and long-time immigrants. Together, they are all Hawaiians, and all are feeling the consequences of the affordability crisis. But for native Hawaiians, it is much worse. So they came up with a very noble idea. In the past, the military and American settlers had taken away much land from native Hawaiians, and they all agreed that they had to give back some of these lands to the native peoples. So this is what they came up with. They established the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. In simple terms, if you're at least 50% Hawaiian, you can sign up for their waitlist to be given a plot of land. So these waitlists, they are publicly available, and this is just one of them. The backlog on this thing is insane, and the person who has been waiting the longest for a plot of land has been waiting here since 1979, and most people have been waiting here for decades. But let me also tell you a little bit about the progress that has been made. All these red lands have been allocated for native Hawaiians, but notice that on Oahu there has been very little progress. If we zoom in on this island, you can see that some plots have been awarded, and this place is very significant. On this island, Honolulu is situated. This is where Hawaiians can find the highest paying jobs and the best educational opportunities. Land here is in high demand, but as many native Hawaiians were facing obstacles and difficulties in reclaiming land on this island in particular, the military managed to drastically expand their presence. 1/5 of the entire island is now actively used by the military, but all these blue areas are now inactive and show signs of contamination. Put together, about 10% of the island is contaminated to such an extent by munition, fuel, and chemical residue from military activity that it's now rendered unsuitable for development, and cleanup efforts are still largely absent. One island was bombed for almost 50 years and is now contaminated so much that it had to be closed off for the public. The military is an easy scapegoat for Hawaii's affordability crisis, but on an island group this far from major export markets, they also provide a great economic and employment opportunity. They employ tens of thousands of people and they are spending billions each year in salaries. What is harder to justify is that much of the land is bought by rich mainlanders. On this island, on the northern tip, Mark Zuckerberg owns over 1,500 acres of land. There is another island, which is privately owned by Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle. These are all extreme examples, but 1 in every 4 homes in Hawaii is sold to people who are not permanent residents of Hawaii. This amount of out-of-state demand for housing, as well as the millions of tourists that visit Hawaii each year, puts immense pressure on their housing market. But this graph shows the real problem. The increasing demand is coupled with a sharp decline in new housing completions. Fewer and fewer homes are built, and this makes, of course, the existing housing stock more expensive. These policies and developments make life more expensive in Hawaii.
Prices are rising.
Inflation continues taking a toll on many families here in Hawaii.
This has led to a surge of homelessness. More than 6,000 people are currently homeless.
You don't have to look far to find Hawaii's homeless population.
And Native Hawaiians are affected disproportionately hard by these problems. They account for 41% of Hawaii's total homeless population, while they just make up 11% of the entire population.
The number of people experiencing homelessness in Hawaii has nearly doubled in the last year.
In 2023, wildfires broke out across the state, but particularly on Maui, they came devastatingly close to urban areas.
Hawaii is said to be facing the largest natural disaster in its history.
Thousands of homes and businesses have been destroyed in Maui.
Over 100 people died in the flames, and entire neighborhoods were turned to ash. The fires destroyed over 2,000 homes. Most of them were older, relatively affordable homes. And the people that lived here often had deep generational ties to the area. But the cost of construction had now risen so much that many were unable to rebuild their houses, and they were forced to either move away or to live with homelessness. But this time, it had gotten nationwide attention.
Developers almost immediately started trying to snatch up property there.
Lahaina's now barren landscape is being eyed by developers who want to replace the community with luxury properties.
Stories broke about a land grab in the affected area. There was suddenly so much attention in the media. While the debate started about the effect of the fires on the housing shortage, it evolved into a broader discussion about, amongst other things, plans to phase out vacation rentals entirely. But there still has been little progress on improving the affordability challenges in Hawaii. But there has been some progress with returning land to Native Hawaiians.
DHHL estimates that to clear the 29,000-person-long waitlist for homes, it would cost a total of $6 billion. While leaders aren't asking for that much, they went before legislatures today to plead for their case for another $600 million.
You're talking about $6 billion tax-paying dollars to clear the wait list. And if what you're telling me is out of the first allocation of the $600 million, you were only able to award 1,600 leases, the math is not mathing.
Giving back land to Native Hawaiians would be delivering on a century-old promise. And some small steps in the right direction have been taken, like in March 2025, when they awarded more than 600 new project leases in West Oahu. That's an accomplishment, but it's still not enough. Hawaii is facing many of the same challenges that other Western countries are facing, but it is much more extreme. But at least right now, there's a lot of attention and awareness of the marginalized position of Native Hawaiians. But at no time and place in human history have people that were colonized ever become equal partners in the country that colonized them.